Third bad idea, life is a battle between good people and evil people. So there's a whole chapter in the happiness hypothesis on the faults of others, because we're all self-righteous hypocrites. We all are prone to dichotomous thinking and tribalism. As Solzhenitsyn says in the Gulag Archipelago, the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. The ancients know this. The ancients knew this. Every culture advises us. I don't know of anyone where we were advised, judge more and more harshly lest you be, or before someone judges you. Like, that's not the way it works. It's always something more like, why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye but do not notice the log in your own eye? You hypocrite. We're hypocrites by design. I cover that in The Righteous Mind, why we're designed for hypocrisy. Now throw in tribalism. The Bedouin proverb, me against my brother, me and my brother against our cousin, me, my brother, and cousin against the stranger. This is tribalism, this is sports, this is politics, this is religion at times. We're a tribal species, and we bond with whatever group is needed to confront whatever the threat is. And it's great fun, as you know, at Penn State every Sunday in the fall. But if you put these together, here's what you get. Here's a really bad mix of it. You get a call-out culture. So let me just give you a quote on that, and then I'll ask all the students whether you have it here. So this is at Smith. So again, at elite schools in the Northeast, it's really intense. It's everywhere that I go, at the elite schools in the New England especially, and also in California. We'll see what people say here. So a student at Smith wrote, during my first days at Smith, I witnessed countless conversations that consisted of one person telling the other that their opinion was wrong. The word offensive was almost always included. People could soon detect a politically incorrect view and call the person out on their mistake. I began to voice my opinion less often to avoid being berated and judged by a community that claims to represent the free expression of ideas. I learned, along with every other student, to walk on eggshells for fear that I may say something offensive. That is the social norm here. So this is what a Smith student said. At many schools I go to, I ask, and 100% of the students will say yes. I was just at a fancy prep school in Connecticut, and 100% said yes, they have it. But I don't know. Let's find out. So just current Penn State undergraduates, we'll only do undergraduates. Would you say yes? Now, I know it's not pervasive here. It's not in most of your classes for sure. My question is, do you have any classes where this is the case, where you are afraid to speak up because that will happen to you? So just Penn State students, raise your hand if your answer is yes. You've seen that here. Raise your hand high. Okay, a lot of you. And raise your hand if you'd say no, you have not seen that here. Okay, so actually about 3 or 4 to 1, yes. So you have it here. Penn State students, raise your hand if you'd say it's present in most of your classes. Raise your hand high. Okay, only a few. And raise your hand if no, it's not present in most of your classes. Okay, so that's my sense. Here at Penn State, it's much better than at most top schools in the Northeast. But you still have it. It's in some classes. It varies a lot by department. There are certain departments that tend to foster this. It's not just you who are self-censoring. We professors are self-censoring like mad. I don't teach nearly as provocatively as I used to 5 years ago. And so we're all, in a sense, walking on eggshells. Now, a big part of the reason, I believe, is the prevalence of the idea of intersectionality. Let me just explain this very carefully. Because we're in the middle of a big culture war, and there are a lot of people from the right who want to say, oh, identity politics and intersectionality and cultural Marxism, this is destroying the university. I'm not one of those. I'm not on the right. I used to be on the left. Now I'm a nonpartisan. And it's been incredibly freeing to be a social scientist studying this stuff without feeling like you're on a team that has to win. So let me be very clear. The core idea of intersectionality is absolutely right. Kimberly Crenshaw developed the term, and the basic idea is that identities don't just add, they interact. So to be a black woman in America is not the sum of being a black person and being a female person. There are unique indignities, insults, oversights, problems that a black woman faces in America, and that others, especially let's say white men, wouldn't even notice. And until you have terms for it, you don't notice it. So she has a great TED Talk. I urge you to watch her TED Talk. There's nothing I object to in a TED Talk. It's a very good talk, and it's an important idea, okay? The problem, I believe, is that as it's taught on campus, as it's taught in certain departments that emphasize intersectionality, it's taught with this basic intellectual structure. Let's look at identities, and they're all binary. You're on one side or the other. And so you're either white or you're non-white. And these are not just random dimensions. These are valenced. They are morally valenced. The ones above the horizontal line are privileged and powerful. Therefore, they are oppressors. Therefore, they are morally bad. Those are the bad people. Whereas the people below, the identities below, are the unprivileged. They are the oppressed, and therefore they are the good people. And they're not just individual people, they're intersectional addresses. And the main intersectional address is the heterosexual white male. That is the person, that is the group, that is the cause of most of the problems. They are the really bad people. They are the oppressors. Now, of course, there is such a thing as privilege. Of course, people have different experiences. I'm not saying we shouldn't be talking about these things. But what I see coming out of people who take more than one course in these topics is a kind of an idea that the world is divided into good people and bad people. And so you can see it just in the last few years. We're seeing a lot of this, a lot of stuff that is really sort of violent in a sense, or at least advocating violence in ways that would have been unthinkable 10 or 20 years ago. So a student at Texas State University, ontologically speaking, white death will mean liberation for all. And so it goes on and on about white genocide. Now, he doesn't literally mean that white people should be biologically killed. He means culturally killed. White people should be wiped out in terms of their cultural presence. But to use this language of genocide in a student editorial, this is just not very helpful if you're trying to create a tolerant, multicultural environment. And it's not just students on campus. Well, this is another one. So this is at the New School a few blocks north of where I live. It's an incredibly progressive, anti-racist school, but some students there have learned that the New School is a bastion of white supremacy, and so they need special spaces for everyone who is not a straight white person. It's not just students. It's now in the media. It's now adults. It's now people, journalists. This is a gender studies professor. Of course, Harvey Weinstein is a criminal. He's a horrible man who deserves to go to jail. And we now know many women have been harassed and molested and even raped that we didn't know before. So the Me Too movement is very, very important. How should we react to this? Well, one way would be to say the world is divided into good people, the women, and bad people, the men. We, women, have every right to hate you, men, as a sex, as a gender. You have done us wrong. The New York Times recently hired someone who writes this way. So Sarah Jong had a number of tweets about how much she hates white people, and the New York Times hired her. Interestingly, a feminist named Jessica Valenti defended her with an exact paraphrase of Great Untruth number 3. As she put it, Sarah Jong is good, her haters are bad. It's not difficult. It's that simple. Good, bad. That's all there is to it. And then recently we saw a really horrible one. So many people, again, people who are in this intersectional culture that judges by race and gender, saw this photo, and as Reza Aslan put it, honest question, have you ever seen a more punchable face than this kid's? Because violence against the bad people is a good thing. They're the cause of our problems. We should round them up and punch them or kill them. Okay? Again, not the best way to think if you're trying to create a tolerant, open, diverse, multicultural society or university. Here's a much better way to think. It's the way that the great civil rights leaders thought. It's the way that works. It's called common humanity identity politics. So identity politics is not a bad thing. You need politics. In fact, the motto of the McCourtney Institute is what? Partisans for democracy. Okay, but politics is a good thing. Groups need to organize to address grievances and injustices. You have to have identity politics. You know, if corn growers can organize and comic book readers can organize, then black people can organize and Jewish people and gay people. So identity politics is not bad. But if it's organized by common hatred of the enemy, it gets ugly quick. And it never works on a university. But if you follow some of the great civil rights leaders like Pauli Murray, who's gay, or we would now say transgender black Episcopal priest, got a law degree at Yale, she said, I intend to destroy segregation by positive and embracing methods. When my brothers try to draw a circle to exclude me, I shall draw a larger circle to include them. This is really good social psychology. Draw a circle around us all, and then within the circle we can talk about difficult things. So the Dalai Lama, also fantastic, as Buddhists tend to be on this. I'm Tibetan, I'm Buddhist, and I'm the Dalai Lama. But if I emphasize these differences, it sets me apart and raises barriers. What we need to do is pay more attention to the ways in which we are the same as other people. So imagine a university that was structured on the 3 unwisdom principles. Imagine what it would be like to be a student there. Imagine a business choosing where to hire from. What business in its right mind would hire someone who came out believing these 3 things? Conversely, imagine a university that rejected them and that was based on the basic psychological principles that I've explained today. So what can we do? What can Penn State do to set Gen Z up for success? Briefly, point number 1, you need viewpoint diversity. You have to expose people to a variety of viewpoints. As Ruth Simmons said, learning is the antithesis of comfort. The collision of views and ideologies is in the DNA of the academic enterprise. You have to expose students to ideas that they dislike and reject. Point number 2, I co-founded this organization, Heterodox Academy, because I was alarmed as a social psychologist that everyone in my field was on one side politically, and it made it hard for us to actually think clearly about problems. Please raise your hand if you're a professor or an administrator at Penn State. Anyone who just raised their hand, I invite you to join Heterodox Academy. Just go to heterodoxacademy.org, click on About Us, click on Join, and I welcome you. We are the only politically balanced organization in the academy. Equal numbers of people on the left and the right. We have 2,500 professors, and now we have hundreds of administrators. Third, use the Open Mind program. We designed it to be used in freshman orientation, but it works great in all kinds of classes, political science classes. It walks students through why it's good to talk to people who differ from you, how to cultivate intellectual humility, helps you break free from your moral matrix. I won't go through this. We have data that it actually works. It does what it's supposed to do. The good stuff goes up, the bad stuff goes down. A fourth point, teach all incoming students cognitive behavioral therapy. You could hire another therapist for $130,000, or you could buy the entire incoming class his book for $10 a piece. It's a lot cheaper. And then students themselves could actually do therapy on themselves, and it just teaches critical thinking skills. And last, I'm going to end with a 3-minute video. This basically sums it all up. Van Jones, a Democratic activist, he was in the Obama White House. Van Jones gave a talk at the University of Chicago, and they had just had an event on campus at Chicago where somebody from the Trump administration was going to speak, and some students protested. They want him disinvited. And so David Axelrod, Democratic strategist, interviews Van Jones and says, Van, what do you think? What do you think about this? And so just listen to the way, this is the most brilliant exposition of anti-fragility I have ever heard.
I have a different view, but I'm interested in yours.
Look, I don't like bigots and bullies. I just want to point that out. I'm against bigots, I'm against bullies. So just leave that as it is.
Those who like bigots and bullies, raise your...
Yeah, exactly. But I'm going to say I got tough talk for my liberal colleagues on these campuses. And they don't tend to like it, but they tend to like me, so I can get away with it. So I'm going to keep trying to push.
Let's test the proposition.
Exactly. I want to push this. There are 2 ideas about safe spaces. One is a very good idea, and one is a terrible idea. The idea of being physically safe on a campus, not being subjected to sexual harassment and physical abuse or something like that, or being targeted specifically personally for some kind of hate speech, you are an N-word, whatever. Perfectly fine with that. Perfectly fine with that. But there's another view that is now, I think, ascendant, which I think is just a horrible view, which is that I need to be safe ideologically. I need to be safe emotionally. I just need to feel good all the time. And if someone says something that I don't like, that is a problem for everybody else, including the administration. And I think that is a terrible idea for the following reason. I don't want you to be safe ideologically. I don't want you to be safe emotionally. I want you to be strong. That's different. I'm not going to pave the jungle for you. Put on some boots and learn how to deal with adversity. I'm not going to take all the weights out of the gym. That's the whole point of the gym. This is the gym. You can't live on a campus where people say stuff you don't like, and these people can't fire you. They can't arrest you. They can't beat you up. They can just say stuff you don't like, and you get to say stuff back. And this you cannot bear.
Okay, so you get the point. So basically, so there are two models of adolescence, two models of young people that we can have, that we can encourage our students to think of. They can either think of themselves as being balloons full of feelings in a world full of pins, or they can think of themselves as fires. And to close, I would just like to say to every student here, you are the fire. Now go find some wind. Thank you.